Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking on a stack of resources that are absolutely critical for anyone involved in the VITA and TCE programs.
That's right.
If you're preparing to take that certification test, or, even if you're a veteran coordinator looking for some clarity on the deepest ethical requirements, you are in the right place. Because when you volunteer, it doesn't matter if you're a greeter, a reviewer, a preparer, or a coordinator, you are essentially the front line of taxpayer trust.
That is the perfect way to frame it. It really is. The stakes here aren't just financial. They're based entirely on integrity.
Exactly.
We're looking at the foundational principles that govern the ethical behavior of every single volunteer, the 6 core volunteer standards of conduct, or VSC.
And our mission for this deep dive.
It's to give you a shortcut to mastering these 6 standards, along with the operational non-negotiables, the quality site requirements, or QSRs.
The things you need to know not just to pass your certification test.
Right, but to maintain the integrity of this really crucial public service.
So the core mission, as the IRS defines it, sounds pretty simple. It's assisting eligible taxpayers in satisfying their tax responsibilities by providing free tax return preparation.
It sounds simple, and it is powerful.
But that begs the question, why this intense, almost legalistic focus on ethical standards and documentation?
Because the integrity of the VE and TC programs has been, it's been tested repeatedly.
Yeah.
This enhanced VSC training exists because unacceptable, sometimes frankly fraudulent practices were discovered in past filing seasons.
By who?
By investigative groups like the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, TGITA, and by IRSPEC itself.
And these incidents, they compromised public trust.
They did, in a service that's specifically designed to help vulnerable people. So the VSC and the QSRs, they're the structure put in place to regulate volunteers, enforce quality, and, most importantly, to protect the taxpayer.
And to protect you, the volunteer, from accusations of misconduct. Okay, let's unpack this key distinction right out of the gate, because this feels like the heart of the matter. It's the difference between an honest mistake and a career-ending, program-damaging violation.
Yes.
When we're dealing with tax law this complex, where exactly is that crucial line drawn between a lack of knowledge and actual unethical behavior?
It is the single most important concept in this deep dive. Unethical behavior is specifically defined as not conforming to agreed standards of moral conduct.
Okay.
And critically, it usually involves the intent to disregard established laws, procedures, or policies.
So it's about what you were thinking.
Precisely. You cannot confuse this with a lack of knowledge or, a simple clerical error or a math mistake. We call the latter negligence or an accuracy error, which just requires some corrective training.
What the former?
The former is willful misconduct.
That distinction. It sounds subtle in practice. Can you walk us to a scenario where a volunteer might accidentally cross that line without the intent to defraud?
Certainly. Imagine a volunteer named Mary. She's certified at the advanced level.
Okay.
She prepares a return and includes a $500 education credit. The taxpayer, however, didn't actually qualify for that credit.
Why not?
Because the school wasn't an eligible institution. Now, if Mary did this because she genuinely misunderstood the tax law, maybe she read Publication 412 a little too quickly and missed a key definition.
It can happen.
Of course. In that case, she did not act unethically. It was a failure of due diligence, sure. It was a mistake or a lack of knowledge.
And what's the remedy for that?
Immediate corrective training. That's it.
But what if Mary knew the school wasn't eligible? Or maybe the taxpayer even told her they didn't have the right proof of enrollment, and Mary just manually entered the credit anyway. She's sort of substituting her own judgment for the law.
Then Mary knowingly allowed a credit for which the taxpayer did not qualify. She demonstrated a willful intent to disregard the policy and the law.
And that's it. That's the line.
That is the line. That's an act of unethical intent, a direct violation of VSC number 4, and it results in removal from the program.
So the VSC standards are designed to test your character and your adherence to rules, not your ability to never make a calculation error.
You've got it. That distinction is the bedrock of today's deep dive. We are checking not just for accuracy, but for integrity.
All right, let's start with the absolute foundation, the agreement that establishes that integrity. I'm talking about Form 13615, the Volunteer Standards of Conduct Agreement.
Yes.
It's not just a formality, right? It's an annual, legally significant contract that certifies your commitment to those standards.
It is the governing document, and it has to be signed and dated annually by all volunteers before they can work at a VITA or TCE site.
But there's a crucial validity requirement built into the QSRs that volunteers, and especially coordinators, have to nail down.
There is. The form is not valid until the sponsoring partner's approving official, whether that's a coordinator, an instructor, or an administrator, confirms the volunteer's identity, name, and address.
And why is that identity confirmation so critical?
It's a foundational anti-fraud measure. I mean, think about it. The official has to physically review a government-issued photo ID.
Like a driver's license.
Exactly. They confirm that the name and address on the form matches the ID and that the name matches the profile in the Link and Learn taxes system.
So it's a three-way check.
It is. Only then can the approving official sign and date the form, making it effective. That dual sign-off ensures accountability on both sides, the volunteer's commitment, and the site's verification that this person is who they say they are and is legally eligible to participate.
So once that form is signed, the next hurdle is certification. And these requirements, they vary wildly depending on the role you take on at the site. This is where precision really matters for the certification test.
Absolutely. First, the non-negotiable requirement. All volunteers.
All of them.
All of them. And this is often a test question. Everyone from greeters and intake specialists to preparers and reviewers must pass the VSC certification test.
And the passing score.
80% or higher. New volunteers have to complete the training first, but this is the ethical gateway for absolutely everyone.
Got it. VSC certification for everyone. Now, what about the roles that manage the client experience and the flow of the tax prep process?
Right. Those roles deal with the process flow and quality control. So we're talking return preparers, quality reviewers, coordinators, client facilitators, and tax law instructors.
Big group.
It is. And they must also certify an intake interview and quality review.
Which they do using the Publication 5101 training materials.
Correct. This just ensures a standardized, high-quality client interaction from the moment they walk in the door until they get their completed return.
And then there's the core knowledge itself, the tax law.
Yes. Volunteers who will be answering tax law questions, instructing tax law classes, actually preparing or correcting returns, or conducting quality reviews must certify in tax law.
And this is an annual requirement, right, to stay up on any changes?
Every single year. It's essential.
Now, one detail that often trips up volunteers is the coordinator requirement. If a coordinator isn't prepping returns or answering technical questions, do they still have to wade through all the advanced tax law certification materials?
That is a critical exception, and it's spelled out in the IRS certification paths chart.
Okay, good to know.
Coordinators who do not provide tax law assistance, correct rejected returns, or quality review returns are not required to certify in tax law.
So they can focus on the admin side.
Exactly. They still have to pass the VSC and the intake interview and quality review certification, but they can stick strictly to site administration and skip the specific tax law test. It's a smart way to ensure administrative leaders aren't overburdened if they have no tax prep responsibilities.
And we also have specific training levels based on the complexity of returns the site handles. I know the instructors have a particularly high bar to clear.
They do. Tax law instructors must certify at the advanced level or higher, demonstrating mastery of a broad range of tax scenarios.
And it's crucial to remember that preparers and quality reviewers have to stay in their lane.
They absolutely must only work within the scope of their certified level. If a site is preparing returns that involve, say, complicated capital gains or foreign tax credits, the volunteers must be certified to the advanced or specialist level.
And working outside your scope is dangerous.
It is. And as we'll discuss later, it can actually void your protection under the Volunteer Protection Act.
Finally, a quick note on the requirements set by the sponsoring partners themselves.
That's a key detail. Partner requirements can never be lower than the IRS minimums.
But they can be higher.
It can definitely be higher. For instance, if a partner organization like AARP Foundation Tax Aid decides all their tax counselors must certify at the advanced level, regardless of the simplicity of the return.
That's their call.
That's their prerogative. They're just setting a higher internal standard, which is a perfectly acceptable practice.
That sets the table beautifully for our first standard, which is all about following the rules of operation. VSC number 1, follow all quality site requirements.
This standard is foundational because if we fail operationally, we fail ethically. The QSRs are the operational playbook. They're designed to ensure quality, accuracy, and consistent site operation across the entire country.
And the distinction here is crucial. If a volunteer forgets a QSR step and the coordinator catches it and corrects it, that's just a fixable mistake, right?
Right, exactly. A VSC number 1 violation occurs if a volunteer refuses to follow an established QSR or repeatedly ignores it. It's about the refusal, not the mistake.
Okay, let's dive deep into a few of the most critical QSRs, starting with the heart of accuracy assurance, QSR number 2, intake interview and quality review process.
The absolute mandate here is the mandatory use of Form 13614C, the intake interview and quality review sheet.
And that's for every single return.
For every single tax return prepared by a certified volunteer, no exceptions. This form is the guide, and it's the first line of defense. The volunteer has to verify every single answer on pages 1 through 3 with the taxpayer.
And what if the taxpayer, they fill it out in the waiting room and pre-check a box incorrectly before the interview even starts?
Good question. The volunteer must physically cross out the incorrect box, initial the correction, and then use the notes column to clarify the change.
So you're creating a clear paper trail.
Exactly. The effectiveness of the QSR depends on a complete, corrected, and accurate Form 13614C before preparation even begins. If that form is incomplete, the entire process is compromised from the start.
And QSR number 2 immediately leads to the non-negotiable quality review process.
Indeed. All returns have to undergo a complete quality review to ensure accuracy based on that completed 13614C, the interview, and the taxpayer supporting documents.
And here's the absolute frequently tested rule.
Self-review is not allowed, period. All returns must be quality reviewed by another volunteer who is certified to the required tax law level for that return.
So having 2 sets of certified eyes on every return is a critical redundancy built directly into VSC number 1.
It is the core of our quality process.
Speaking of redundancy, that ties directly into identity verification, which is so critical in fighting fraud. Let's look at QSR number 3, confirming ID and TIN.
This QSR establishes a robust 2-step confirmation process for identity and taxpayer identification numbers, or TINs.
And the process has to use acceptable documents.
Right. Original photo ID for the taxpayer and spouse if they're filing jointly, and the original documents confirming the Social Security number or ITIN for everyone listed on the return.
This isn't just a casual glance.
No, it's a verification.
And the verification has to happen twice.
Exactly. Once by the preparer or volunteer during intake, and then again by the quality reviewer before the taxpayer signs Form 8879, which is their consent to e-file.
So if a quality reviewer just routinely skips checking the photo ID and the Social Security card against the data entry on the return,
that is a pattern of refusal to follow a QSR, which makes them vulnerable to a VSC number 1 violation. This whole process protects the site from processing fraudulent returns.
Okay, next we have a fascinating operational rule designed primarily for security. QSR number 6, timely filing of tax returns. This is where the concept of stockpiling comes in.
Stockpiling is a major security risk. It's defined as waiting more than 3 calendar days to submit a return once everything's done.
What does everything's done mean exactly?
It means all the necessary documents are secured, the quality review is complete, and the taxpayer has provided consent to e-file by signing Form 8879. The site has 3 days from that point to e-file the return.
Why is this 3-day window so strictly enforced? What's the big deal?
It's threefold: security, operational efficiency, and taxpayer expectations.
Okay, break that down.
Operationally, it prevents backlogs. Security-wise, every day, those completed returns sit in a folder waiting to be filed. They're at risk of loss, physical compromise, or digital breach.
So PII compromises often happen during storage delays.
Very often, especially if documents are just left unsecured overnight. And finally, taxpayer expectations. They sign the e-file consent, they expect it to be filed right away.
But what if the process stalls indefinitely? A return is prepared, but the taxpayer never comes back to sign Form 8879, or they refuse to provide a key document needed for review.
That happens. If the return is deactivated in the tax software because of a lack of response or unresolved issues, the site has to notify the taxpayer to come back and pick up their documents.
And if they just don't show up?
If the taxpayer doesn't return within the specified time frame, QSR number 6 mandates that the site must properly dispose of those tax documents containing PII.
And properly dispose is a very specific process here.
It is, and this is a testable item. As outlined in Publication 4299, proper disposal means irreversible destruction, burning or shredding the data. Simply throwing sensitive documents into a regular recycling bin or a big unlocked dumpster is a severe QSR number 6 violation and therefore a VSE number 1 violation.
It just illustrates the extreme sensitivity and confidentiality of the information we handle.
Absolutely.
That leads us perfectly to the comprehensive security standard, QSR number 10, security, privacy, and confidentiality.
And publication 4299 is the critical guide here. Every site coordinator must have security procedures in place, which includes preparing an annual security plan.
That's Form 15272, right? The template for that plan.
That's the one. And this plan details everything from the physical layout of the site to the digital controls.
So let's discuss the operational requirements for QSR 10.
They cover both digital and physical security. Digitally, all computers have to be password protected, and you can only use hardwired or encrypted and password-protected wireless internet connections.
And physically?
Physically, the site setup is crucial. Screens have to be positioned so only the preparer, reviewer, and taxpayer can see the sensitive data. When the site closes, all laptops, tablets, and any physical documents with PII have to be secured in locked cabinets or a secured room.
And finally, the management of volunteers' access is a critical part of QSR 10.
Oh, absolutely. Coordinators have to manage software access, limiting volunteer privileges based on their assigned roles.
So a greeter doesn't need preparation access.
Exactly. And most critically, if a volunteer quits, resigns, or is removed for misconduct, their usernames have to be deactivated immediately to prevent any unauthorized access to taxpayer data.
We've covered the operational flow of the site. Now let's talk about the integrity of the transaction itself, starting with VSC number 2. No payment, donations, or refund payments.
The VITA and TCE model rests on one word: free. We do not accept payment from clients for tax preparation.
And the rule regarding donations is designed to prevent even the appearance of a mandatory payment.
Exactly. Explicitly prohibited are donation or tip jars in the entry, the waiting area, the tax prep area, or the quality review area.
Because that would confuse the taxpayer into thinking a donation is required for the service.
It would. If a sponsoring organization accepts donations, those collection points have to be totally separate, say at the far end of a facility or office where they couldn't possibly imply a connection to the tax service.
So let's play this out. A client is overwhelmingly grateful, they're so happy, and they insist on slipping you some money, say a gift card. What is the mandatory conversational response? We need to give the listener a script here.
Okay. The volunteer must refuse, politely but firmly. You return the money or the gift card with a smile and you say, "Thank you so much, but we cannot accept payment or tips for our services. This program is 100% free."
And if they still insist?
Suggesting a non-monetary gift like coffee or donuts for the whole site next week is the recommended polite deflection. But you absolutely cannot accept money.
Now, let's address the refund payments part of VSC number 2. This is the crucial barrier preventing volunteers from abusing their access to client financial data.
This rule is absolute. A taxpayer's federal or state refund must only be deposited into an account bearing the taxpayer's name.
No exceptions.
None. Volunteers, partners, associated organizations, they cannot accept the direct deposit of a taxpayer's refund into their personal, business, or organizational accounts.
Even if the volunteer's intent is genuinely helpful, like trying to help an unbanked taxpayer get their money faster.
Even then, that action immediately raises questions of misappropriation and is a severe VSC number 2 violation.
That sets up a high wall of financial separation. Let's move to VSC number 3. No solicitation or personal benefit. This shifts the focus from monetary integrity to data integrity.
Right. This standard prohibits using taxpayer information, marital status, income, phone number, financial details for direct or indirect personal benefit.
And that's for themselves, any other individual, or any organization.
Correct. This covers everything from using their financial status to engage in personal financial transactions, all the way to soliciting business.
I often hear about volunteers who have a side hustle. So if they're a licensed insurance agent or an accountant, the line here is crystal clear, right? They cannot use information learned during the VITA interview to pitch their paid services.
Absolutely prohibited. If during the interview you discover the taxpayer is planning to start a small business, you cannot say, "Hey, I'm an accountant. I can help you incorporate for a fee."
Or if your side business is selling health insurance and you note on the 13614C that the taxpayer is uninsured.
You cannot offer to sell them a policy. The standard is broad. Even a greeter can't use their position to solicit candy orders for their daughter's school fundraiser from clients waiting in line.
This is a complex area because VITA and TCE want to help the unbanked, which often means partnering with financial institutions. How do sites maintain the integrity of VSC number 3 while providing that resource?
They have to adhere to really strict separation rules. First, any financial institution or credit union providing services, even beneficial ones like helping a client open a free account, has to be located in a separate space from the tax prep area.
Not in the waiting room.
No, not in the waiting room or preparation area. Second, volunteers must not use specific information they learned during the tax interview to promote those services.
So you can't tell a client, hey, since you're getting an $8,000 refund, you should go talk to the bank across the hall.
No. The conversation has to be generic and limited to resource direction, not a sales pitch.
There's also this very fine line involving partner organizations that run paid services alongside the free VITA site.
This is a critical nuance, and it's detailed in the source material.
Let's walk through it.
Okay. If a partner organization operates a paid tax service in the same building as the VITA site, and a VITA volunteer reviews the 2614C, determines the taxpayer's income exceeds the VITA limit,
And then directs that customer to the partner's paid service located down the hall.
that is a VSC number 3 violation.
Why?
Because the volunteer used confidential intake information, the income level, for the direct organizational benefit of the paid service. The referral has to be to a list of other free qualified resources, not to a specific paid service associated with the partner.
This standard carries the weight of the federal government. VSC number 3 leads directly to serious criminal penalties under IRC Section 7216.
IRC Section 7216 is the heavy hammer protecting PII. It imposes criminal penalties on tax return preparers who knowingly or recklessly make unauthorized disclosures or uses of taxpayer information.
And this isn't just a civil fine.
No, a violation is a federal misdemeanor. It carries a maximum penalty of up to 1 year in prison or a $1,000 fine, or both. The message is clear. The confidentiality of that PII is mandated by federal law, and the IRS takes it very seriously.
Are there any exceptions where sites can use aggregate data, maybe for fundraising, without triggering the consent requirement?
Yes, there are narrow exceptions for aggregate data use. Volunteer sites can use or disclose the total number of returns prepared, or the total number of refunds, or the total number of credits claimed for fundraising or marketing.
But without securing explicit taxpayer consent.
Right, but 2 major conditions apply. The data cannot include any PII whatsoever, no name, no SSN, no address, and it has to involve data from at least 10 returns to maintain anonymity.
You can't just release a single person's data.
Right, and you cannot market statistical compilations that reflect specific dollar amounts of refunds or credits without consent.
Finally, let's get to the standard that defines program integrity. VSC number 4. Do not knowingly prepare false returns.
This is the definitive breach of ethical intent. It is not an accidental miscalculation. It is when a volunteer knowingly bends or breaks the law or ignores information presented by the taxpayer to help them get an undeserved refund or credit.
And when a volunteer acts with this willful intent,
They have committed the most damaging violation possible.
what are the concrete consequences for the taxpayer when a volunteer knowingly files a false return? Because the volunteer gets removed, but the low-income taxpayer is left with this ruinous fallout.
The hardship is immediate and severe, especially since the VITCE clients are often financially fragile.
So what happens?
The taxpayer will inevitably face an audit or some other unwanted interaction with the IRS. They'll be required to pay back the additional tax that was fraudulently omitted or the credits that were falsely claimed, plus interest and plus substantial civil penalties.
And if they can't pay?
They enter the IRS collection process. That can involve a tax lien against their property or a levy of garnishment on their bank accounts or wages.
That is the financial disaster we need to illustrate. Let's use the EICOH example to show the financial gravity of a disallowed claim.
Okay. If a taxpayer's return fraudulently claims the Earned Income Credit, the EIC, and it's later disallowed in an audit because the taxpayer can't provide documentation, the financial impact is enormous.
How much are we talking?
EIC alone can be worth $3,000 or more. The disallowance of that EIC, combined with penalties and interest, could easily result in a balance due of over $4,000.
Wow.
And if that fraud also involved incorrectly claiming the head of household filing status and the child tax credit, maybe by claiming a non-qualifying dependent, that total balance due can easily exceed $6,000.
For a low-income taxpayer, that is catastrophic debt.
It is. It can take years to pay off, forcing them into long-term installment agreements. The volunteer who knowingly facilitated this has caused immense, immense harm.
Here is where it gets really interesting and, unfortunately, all too real. The identity theft risk. This involves the most egregious actions by unscrupulous actors who leverage their access to PII.
Identity theft continues to be an alarming risk. The source material provides a chilling, specific scenario of how an unscrupulous volunteer can exploit their position to file fraudulent returns.
Tell us about Jane, the volunteer who acquired SSNs illegally.
Okay, so Jane, a certified volunteer, is helping the coordinator, Joe, at the site. Joe finds an e-file acceptance report from the previous year. It's got multiple taxpayers' SSNs and names on it. He asks Jane to properly shred it.
She doesn't.
Instead of shredding it, Jane secretly puts the report in her purse. Later that night, using her authorized access to the VII tax prep software, she prepares falsified tax returns for the 8 SSNs listed on that report.
And she makes sure they all generate big refunds.
Of course. And, critically, she enters her own bank account information in the direct deposit fields and e-files them.
She used the PII she illegally acquired at the site to steal the refunds, a clear violation of VSC number 4 and a criminal act. But how would the IRS find her?
The IRS spec has detection systems in place specifically designed to flag this type of organized fraud.
What's the red flag?
One major red flag is tax returns filed through VITA or TCE, where multiple unrelated tax refunds are all being deposited into a single bank account.
Ah, so her actions would trigger an immediate investigation.
Immediately. This would be reported to IRS Criminal Investigation and TGTF, resulting in criminal charges.
So what does this all mean for the good faith volunteer? What's our responsibility when we suspect a compromise?
Any suspicion of identity theft, whether it's internal or external, must be reported immediately to IRS Criminal Investigation and TGTF. We are the first line of defense.
The whole model relies on integrity.
It does, and if that integrity is compromised by fraud, the consequences are swift and severe for everyone involved, from the fraudster to the site itself.
Moving on to the standards of conduct that define professional conduct, let's look at VSC number 5. General conduct. Criminal, infamous, dishonest conduct.
This is the standard that covers the program's public reputation. It prohibits any conduct that is prejudicial to the government or detrimental to the VITCE programs.
And this is regardless of whether the conduct actually occurred at the site.
Exactly. It's all about maintaining the reputation and public standing of the entire program.
Give us the example of how outside actions can still violate VSC number 5.
The source material provides the example of a partner organization whose program director was convicted of embezzling funds from an unrelated community organization they also ran.
So the fraud was completely separate from the VIA site.
Completely. But the resulting negative publicity and the, cloud of suspicion were so detrimental that the partner organization was removed from the VITA TCE program entirely.
The program has to be seen as beyond reproach.
That's the idea.
There is also a specific requirement here regarding the legal status of volunteers that is essential to mention.
Right. Volunteers must legally reside in the U.S. They certify this requirement by signing Form 13617.
An unauthorized alien is prohibited from volunteering.
Correct. That's defined as a person not lawfully admitted for permanent residence or employment.
Now, what is the coordinator's due diligence here? Are they expected to verify legal status?
No, and this is a key detail. While coordinators are required to check a volunteer's government-issued photo ID for identity, name, and address, they are explicitly not required to validate the volunteer's legal status.
So the volunteer's signature on Form 13611 is the certification of their legal residency.
It is. If they are lying about that residency status, that would be a violation of VSC number 5 due to dishonest conduct.
Next, the standard that deals directly with how we manage ourselves under pressure. VSC number 6. Treat all taxpayers professionally and respectfully.
This is vital for maintaining public confidence in the program and, frankly, for maintaining your own sanity during a stressful filing season.
VITA's site sites can be high-stress environments.
Oh, absolutely. Taxpayers might have waited for hours, they might be dealing with acute financial stress, or they might be highly resistant to the tax law results.
The requirement is to maintain a courteous, businesslike, and diplomatic manner at all times.
Even when provoked.
Let's expand on the Mille anecdote, the angry taxpayer who insists she always gets a refund. How do we handle that human element of conflict dynamically?
Okay, so Mille comes in, she's self-employed, has few records, and she is furious because her return shows she owes $50 while her neighbor got nearly $2,000 back.
She throws the form down and yells, "You don't know what you're doing. I always get a refund."
In that moment, the volunteer has to recognize that VSC number 6 is actively being tested. The volunteer must resist the urge to argue, take a deep breath, and maintain a calm, level tone.
What should the volunteer say to diffuse the situation while maintaining professionalism?
The volunteer should courteously explain that every tax return is unique, based entirely on the documents provided and the complexities of that specific tax situation, and then politely suggest reviewing the key documents together.
And if Mille continues to escalate, yelling, cursing, causing a disturbance,
The volunteer must immediately involve the coordinator. Mutual yelling and cussing, as the source material shows in a later scenario, is a VSC number 6 violation for the volunteer. Maintaining dignity and diplomacy is paramount.
Speaking of maintaining accuracy and professionalism, let's discuss due diligence. This is the expected degree of care and caution from every volunteer, and it's your primary shield against accusations of negligence.
Due diligence is often the gray area. It dictates how far a preparer has to go when relying on taxpayer information.
And the crucial policy difference in VITA CE is that volunteers may generally rely in good faith on taxpayer information without requiring documentation as verification.
Right. We operate on the honor system, assuming the taxpayer is telling the truth.
So we don't demand receipts for every single Schedule C expense.
No, but this good faith reliance has limits. Due diligence requires volunteers to ask the taxpayer to clarify information that appears inconsistent, incomplete, unusual, or questionable.
For instance, if a taxpayer earning $25,000 suddenly claims $18,000 in unreimbursed business expenses.
That ratio is highly questionable, and the preparer needs to ask probing, clarifying questions. The preparer has to ask themselves, does this information seem suspicious or, too good to be true?
And this leads us to the comfort clause, which is the most powerful tool a volunteer has in an ambiguous ethical situation. It's your self-preservation mechanism.
It really is. If at any time during the due diligence process a volunteer becomes uncomfortable with the information provided, maybe the taxpayer keeps changing their story or they're evasive about key documents, they are not obligated to prepare the return.
The ultimate power in VITA is the power to walk away.
It is. You should seek coordinator assistance, but if the coordinator can't resolve your discomfort, you can ethically say, based on the information, I cannot in good faith prepare this return.
That is a critical responsibility. When a volunteer is struggling with a tax law question or a complex situation, where should they seek answers if they want to exercise due diligence responsibly?
There is a clear chain of resources. First, seek assistance from the coordinator or a more experienced tax preparer on site.
Okay.
Second, research the required publications available at the site, like Publication 17, your federal income tax, or Publication 4012, the VITA Volunteer Resource Guide. You can also research the IRS.gov website or use the interactive tax assistant tools. And finally, if they need technical support that can't be solved locally, they can call the VITA CE hotline at 1-800-829-VITA.
Let's dedicate a conversation block to taxpayer civil rights. QSR number 7. This is often quickly glossed over, but it's so fundamental to access.
It is. QSR number 7 mandates non-discrimination and equal access. Discrimination is strictly prohibited based on race, color, national origin, which includes limited English proficiency or LEP disability, sex, age, or reprisal.
And the core requirement is that sites have to display Publication 4053.
Or D143, yes. This is to ensure civil rights information is available to everyone, even those who walk in and find they're ineligible for the service.
When we talk about equal access, what does that look like in a practical setting for a client who may have a disability or LEP?
It means we have to make reasonable accommodations. For a client with LEP, this means utilizing bilingual volunteers or providing translator services. We can't just turn them away because they don't speak English well enough.
And for clients with disabilities,
sites have to be physically accessible. And for virtual sites, this means the poster publication 4053 has to be sent or made available electronically to the taxpayer.
And if a complaint does arise, the site must refer the taxpayer to the contact information on Publication 4053.
Yes.
And if a complaint is serious enough to warrant reporting outside the site,
written complaints are sent to the IRS Civil Rights Unit in Washington, D.C., or they can be submitted via email to civil.rights.division@torres.gov. We have to make this process transparent.
Our final topic in this section deals with protection, the Volunteer Protection Act of 1997. This acts as your legal shield, but we need to explore its limitations deeply.
The VPA is a federal law that generally protects unpaid volunteers from liability for negligent acts performed within the scope of their responsibilities.
So if you perform your due diligence, follow the QSRs, and make an honest, non-willful mistake that results in the taxpayer owing more money.
The VPA generally shields you from being personally sued. This is a huge protection and gives volunteers a lot of confidence.
But when does that shield drop? This is where the distinction between simple negligence and gross negligence becomes crucial in the VITA context.
The protection is not provided for harm caused by willful or criminal misconduct, or by acts of gross negligence or reckless misconduct.
So simple negligence is an honest mistake.
Right. You missed a box, you calculated the child credit incorrectly because you misread one line of Pub 4012. Gross negligence is a conscious disregard for safety or standard procedures.
Give us some specific VITA examples of where the VPA shield would drop due to gross negligence or recklessness.
Okay. If you're preparing returns outside the scope of your certification, say preparing an advanced level return when you're only certified at the basic level, you are engaging in reckless misconduct, and the VPA may not cover you.
What else?
If you systematically refuse to use Form 13614C, or if you refuse to conduct the dual ID and TIN check, that is a conscious, flagrant indifference to the rights and safety of the taxpayer's PII.
And you lose the shield.
You lose the shield. The crucial caveat is that volunteers are only protected if they are adhering to the VSC and preparing returns within their tax law certification level.
So the VPA is a reward for following the VSC and the QSRs. If you follow the rules, the law protects you from honest mistakes.
But if you disregard the rules, you are acting alone.
Exactly. Adherence to the VSC is the price of the shield.
Now we address the hard reality. The infrastructure of enforcement. Who is in charge of oversight, and how are problems reported when local efforts fail?
IRSEC is ultimately responsible for oversight of the entire VITC program, but the local partners and coordinators are the first line of defense and enforcement.
And if a coordinator confirms a VSC violation, they have to take immediate, decisive action.
They do. The source gives us a direct illustration of this, the Violet and Dale scenario. It's all about speed.
Speed is paramount to protecting the program's reputation and PII.
Right. So Violet, the coordinator, reads in the newspaper that her volunteer, Dale, was arrested for identity theft.
And it's unrelated to the VI site. Totally unrelated, but it involved applying for credit cards using stolen identities. Violet doesn't wait for a formal investigation or an official letter from the IRS.
What does she do?
She immediately notifies the partner, she emails the details to ets.voltax@irs.gov, and crucially, she immediately deactivates Dale's software access.
So when Dale shows up the next day,
Violet advises him that he is immediately removed from the site. Any allegation of criminal or dishonest conduct requires this rapid, decisive action.
what about reporting problems that feel too sensitive or complex to handle locally? Or maybe the problem is the coordinator. This is where the external referral process, or Voltax, comes in.
Voltax provides a dedicated, direct avenue for volunteers, coordinators, or even taxpayers to report problems they feel can't be handled by the local site management.
They send an email to spec headquarters.
Correct. The address is es.voltax@irs.gov.
And what specific information must that email contain to be actionable by IRS spec?
Spec requires specific, detailed information. The reporter's name and contact number, the site name and ID number if known, and a detailed description of the incident.
And that description needs to include
The full name of the individual involved, the specific date the incident occurred, the nature of the alleged VSC violation, and the number of taxpayers affected, if applicable.
And this email address is public.
It is. It's posted on Form 13614-C and Publication 4836, so taxpayers are aware of their ability to make a referral.
Let's summarize the full list of consequences. Because for egregious, willful actions, they are severe and can damage the entire partnership, not just the volunteer.
For willful violations, the consequences are tiered and catastrophic. First, immediate mandatory removal from all VITA and TCE programs permanently.
Second,
Inclusion in the IRS Volunteer Registry, which is a powerful tool to bar future VITCE activity indefinitely.
that's a big one.
It is. Then, deactivation of the sponsoring partner site Electronic Filing Identification Number, or EFI.
Which shuts down the entire site.
The entire site, denying free preparation access to the community.
What else?
Termination of grant funds from the IRS to the sponsoring partner, termination of the sponsoring organization's partnership with the IRS, and finally, referral of the conduct for potential TGT and criminal investigations.
That IRS volunteer registry inclusion is the ultimate consequence. It means one bad actor can't just pack up and move to a different city or a new partner next year and start fresh.
It exists specifically to protect the program from those who commit egregious willful actions. Willful fraud, accepting payments, or causing harm to taxpayers. These actions demonstrate a fundamental lack of integrity, and they are permanently barred from participating.
And the severity of the E.F. Hine loss underscores the collective responsibility. One volunteer's willful misconduct can punish an entire community.
It absolutely can.
Now we get to the core application running through the scenarios we face in the real world to solidify the distinction between negligence, acceptable practice, and willful, unethical behavior. These are designed to test your mastery of the 6 standards.
This section ties everything together. We're applying the VSCs to common ethical and operational dilemmas.
Scenario 1. Joe and Edna, unreported cash income. Edna, a self-employed cleaner, reports $7,500 on a 1099 NEC, but also admits she received $4,000 in cash payments with no documentation.
Okay.
Volunteer Joe suggests omitting the $4,000 in cash because the IRS has no record of it, and he assures Edna the chance of discovery is very small. He prepares the return with only the $7,500 reported. What's the verdict and the specific VSC violation?
This is a clear textbook violation of VSC number 4. Knowingly preparing a fraudulent return.
And the proof is in the conversation.
Yes. Joe's conversation with Edna confirms his intent. He knew the income existed and actively suggested omitting it to deceive the IRS.
What should Joe have done, maintaining due diligence?
Rash income is taxable and must be reported, usually on Schedule C. Joe should have educated Edna on her legal obligation to report all income, including cash, and refused to prepare the return if she insisted on omitting it.
And the consequence for Joe?
Immediate removal, banning from all VITA programs, and inclusion in the IRS volunteer registry. This is a severe, willful violation.
Scenario 2. Marge and George. Fraudulent dependent HOH status. George is single with a dependent, Amelia, who is the child of a friend and not a qualifying relative or child for George. Marge, the preparer, suggests listing Amelia as George's niece so he can qualify for head of household status and the earned income credit. Marge assures George that the chance of the IRS discovering they aren't related is small, and she completes the return fraudulently.
This is a twin violation, VSC number 4, knowingly preparing a fraudulent return.
And again, it's the active participation.
Marge actively participated in constructing a fraudulent filing status to claim unwarranted credits, knowing the dependent relationship was false. The fact that she coached him on how to do it makes the intent unequivocal.
Marge's correct action was to exercise due diligence and her power of refusal.
She should have educated George on the complex dependent eligibility rules using Publication 4012 and refused to prepare the return based on false information. She also should have reported the incident to the coordinator immediately.
Scenario 3. James and Isabel, depositing refund into volunteer's account. Isabel is unbanked and entitled to a $1,200 refund. James, the volunteer, offers to have the refund direct deposited into his own personal checking account to speed up the process, promising he'll turn the money over to her once he receives it.
Oh, boy.
And he does. He gives her the money when it arrives. Violation.
Yes. This violates VSC number 2. Do not accept payment, ask for donations, or accept refund payments.
Even though his intent was to help.
Even then. Depositing the refund into his own account is highly problematic and directly violates the rule that refunds must only be deposited into accounts bearing the taxpayer's name. This violates the core tenet of financial separation and raises serious red flags for potential misappropriation.
What should James have done?
James should have suggested that Isabel open her own bank account, maybe referring her to any partner financial institutions available on site, keeping that referral separate from the tax preparation. He must never use his own account for a taxpayer's refund.
The consequence for James, assuming this was a misguided first-time attempt to help.
He must be immediately pulled aside, counseled that this is strictly prohibited, and receive a formal warning that continuing this behavior would lead to his removal and banning.
Scenario 4. Lily and Ryan, soliciting a date. Volunteer Lily is preparing Ryan's return, notes he is single, and asks him out on a date, giving him her number. Ryan declines, but Lily insists she'll call him later in the week. Violation.
Yes, this is a clear violation of VSC number 3. Do not solicit business from taxpayers you help or use the information you gained about them for any personal benefit.
She's using his PII for personal benefit.
Exactly. Lilly used confidential site interaction and PII, his marital status, and the simple fact that he was there at the site to solicit a personal benefit, a date. Lilly should be immediately reminded and warned that she cannot use taxpayer PII or site interaction for her own benefit, regardless of how innocent she perceives the request to be. Continued solicitation would lead to removal.
Scenario 5. John and Max. Questionable stock basis. Max sold stock but doesn't want to report a large capital gain. He tells volunteer John that the cost basis was equal to or higher than the sales price.
Okay.
John believes Max is lying, but he reminds Max that he signs the return under penalty of perjury and is ultimately responsible for supporting the basis if the IRS examines the return. Max insists, and John prepares and e-files the return. Is this a VSC violation?
This is the definitive due diligence conditional case, which is a key gray area. The answer is conditional.
Why?
John exercised due diligence by questioning the data and reminding Max of the penalty of perjury declaration. John can prepare the return as long as he is relying in good faith on Max's verbal confirmation of the data, despite his personal belief that Max might be stretching the truth.
So, John's due diligence protects him because he's relying on the taxpayer's signature attesting to the truth. When does John's position change?
The second Max admits the basis is false, or if Max says, "I know this is wrong, but just enter it," John's position changes entirely.
So if Max explicitly tells John the amounts are false, and John prepares it anyway,
then John is violating DSC number 4, knowingly preparing a false return. But based on the scenario as written, John is protected by the principle of good faith reliance and due diligence.
Scenario 6. Nathan and the taxpayer. Loud argument cussing. Nathan argues loudly with a taxpayer who became upset about having to provide Form 8332 for a dependent child. Nathan yells back, cusses, and tells the taxpayer, "If you don't like our free service, then you can go somewhere else." Violation.
Yes, this is a clear violation of VSC number 6, failure to treat taxpayers professionally and courteously.
It's the mutual yelling.
He engaged in mutual yelling, failed to maintain the required courteous, businesslike, and diplomatic manner, and compromised the reputation of the VITA site.
What was the correct action?
Nathan should have paused, taken a deep breath, courteously explained the Form A332 requirement, probably referencing Publication 4012, and immediately requested coordinator assistance if the conflict couldn't be resolved calmly.
The consequence for Nathan.
He should be immediately warned that future outbursts will result in his immediate removal as a volunteer. This is generally a serious disciplinary matter, not a criminal offense like VSC 4, but it's corrosive to the program's reputation and can't be tolerated.
Scenario 7. Sandra and the unsecured PII. Sandra, the last volunteer to leave the site on Friday night, forgets to secure her laptop. It contains the tax software and several client returns she was quality reviewing. The laptop is left unsecured on her desk in the main preparation room. Violation.
This is a violation of VSC number 1, failure to follow QSR number 10, security, privacy, and confidentiality.
Even if it wasn't on purpose.
Right. While not necessarily willful, leaving a laptop with PII unsecured overnight is a lapse in adherence to the security plan. It's a severe risk of a data compromise. Sandra should be immediately counseled and warned. If this is a pattern of behavior, repeatedly failing to secure PII after hours, it moves from simple negligence to gross negligence and reckless misconduct. That could result in removal and loss of VPA protection if a breach occurs.
Scenario 8. Carlos and the stockpiling. Carlos, the e-file coordinator, have 5 completed and signed returns waiting for transmission. He's busy and decides to wait 6 calendar days to batch transmit them, believing that waiting until Tuesday is more efficient. Violation.
Yes, this violates VSC number 1, failure to follow QSR number 6, timely filing. Stockpiling is defined as waiting more than 3 calendar days to submit a return after the 8879 is signed.
His preference for efficiency doesn't override the security mandate.
Exactly.
Consequence.
Carlos must be immediately corrected by the site coordinator or partner. A systemic, willful refusal to adhere to the 3-0 filing rule would lead to removal, as it compromises the PII security of all those taxpayers.
That deep dive into the 6 volunteer standards of conduct and the critical quality site requirements illustrates the massive responsibility we take on. It's so much more than just knowing tax law. It's about establishing and maintaining ethical integrity.
The 6 principles are your professional compass. Remember that VSC number 1 mandates adherence to the QSR as your operational checklist.
Things like anti-stockpiling, dual ID verification, and mandatory quality review.
Right. VSC number 2 keeps the service free and clean of personal financial gain. VSC 3 protects PII and prevents solicitation. VSC 4 demands ethical intent and prohibits willful fraud. VSC 5 keeps the program's reputation clean, and VSC 6 requires unwavering professionalism in every interaction.
And the consequences for willful violations are immediate and severe. Removal, EFI and deactivation for the site, and inclusion in the IRS Volunteer Registry, barring future activity indefinitely.
And crucially, remember that the Volunteer Protection Act is only a shield for those who are adhering to these high standards. It protects you from simple negligence, an honest mistake, but it offers zero protection if you are grossly negligent, willfully engaged in fraud, or acting outside the scope of your certification.
The integrity of the VITA and TCE program relies entirely on the ethical commitment and due diligence of every single volunteer. You are trusted guides for taxpayers who are often relying entirely on this free service.
We rely on the taxpayer's word in good faith, but our due diligence requires us to question anything that seems inconsistent. The power to say no is your ultimate act of due diligence and your greatest self-protection.
That moment of refusal, when a taxpayer insists on filing a fraudulent claim or providing questionable information.
That is what truly maintains public trust and protects both you, the volunteer, and the low-income taxpayer from potentially ruinous financial hardship caused by fraud, penalties, and interest.
Think about what that moment of refusal truly means for maintaining public trust. Go ace that certification test, embody the VSC in everything you do this season, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.